I need to practice my pixel art. I'm a game dev and I come from a programming background, which means my art is less than ideal. I work by myself because I don't know any artists who want to work on games, and I think that puts me in a position that is pretty relatable. I want to make a game. That game needs art. I can't afford to pay someone to make art. I guess I'll make the art myself. And try as I might, it always ends up looking like this. So in this video, I'm going to practice my pixel art in preparation for a game I want to work on, which, if all goes to plan, is going to be my first full Steam release, which I'll talk about more at the end of the video. But without revealing too much more, I'm going to show you me trying to learn how to draw pixel art cars from a top-down view. So I'm going to try and guide you through what I was thinking while I was drawing this first piece. I was using reference images to try and help me, but I don't have much experience translating real life images to pixel art, so I don't know how helpful it was. I know that you have to start with the darkest colours though, and then try and build your way up from there. And I was trying to experiment with a few different colours for the highlight tone, but couldn't really settle on anything. So I moved on to working on the bonnet, and added this silvery trimming effect to try and add some paneling, but I think it just ended up making the front of the car look way too busy. I then tried to fix the shape of the bonnet a bit and messed around with the colours a bit more, but still couldn't settle on anything I liked. So I moved on to making the skull on the front of the car that I then decided was, again, too busy, so I moved it onto the roof of the car instead. I was using reference images for this skull, and because it's a more natural looking, indenty, shady shape, I found it a lot easier to create the skull, and I thought it actually looked pretty good. I tried to add some more texturing to the trim, but still wasn't happy with the actual look of the car itself. It felt flat and just the wrong shape. I couldn't work out how to make the front of the car look nice at all, and I still wasn't happy with the shading or even necessarily the colours I had picked for the roof of the car. So after realising I had no idea what I was doing, I went and watched Reese's Pixel Art in 10 Minutes tutorial, which was really nice. It helped a lot with pointing me in the right direction, which was a great help, but I needed some examples of how the workflow was done. I needed to see the process and exactly the ways in which people like to create their sprite work. Luckily, Reese had linked some other super useful resources in the description too, and one channel I quickly gravitated towards was Pixel Pete. His videos are super informative and bingeable. They are full of great practical tips, so I learned a lot from him. Another resource I stumbled on was Derek Yu's Guide to Pixel Art. Again, it went over a lot of the basics, most of which I was already vaguely aware of, but with little practice of putting them into action. I was still wondering what I was missing with my car though. It just looked off and I couldn't work out why. It was only after a fair bit of thinking I realised it was the metal that was off. I was conveying the shapes of the car all wrong because I'd only ever tried to draw more natural shaped things before, and never had actually tried to draw something like a car using pixel art, especially from this perspective. So having identified the problem, I needed to work out how to fix it, and unfortunately the resources I'd used up to this point mainly detailed more organic, natural looking objects, and almost never from a strict aerial view either. I scanned through a bunch of videos and reread the same guides I had used up until this point, but hadn't found anything specific enough to drawing the angular, metal shape of cars from above. It was only then I realised that there was some magic thing out there that I could have made use of, something I'd been missing this entire time that would help me solve this problem I was having. I should look for examples of how other people solve the problems I'm trying to solve as inspiration for how to fix my own pixel art, which is exactly what I did. I found this one in particular that I really like the style of. It perfectly fits the top-down view I wanted, but isn't just a model of a real car like so many of the other reference images I could find. So this would make a perfect point of reference to start from. This was the result of my first attempt to mimic the style of that reference image I found. It really helped me to understand the proportions I needed and the way in which these sprites should be shaded. I think my version was also different enough from the reference image as I used my own canvas size, my own color palette, and freehanded all the drawing myself. However, I wanted to make sure the next few cards I drew were significantly different from this first one, but still used the same concepts and ideas I had learnt from this reference image. Next, I made this little blue car. It's based on a VW Beetle, which is why it is much rounder in appearance than the previous cars. Also, as a nod to it being based on a Beetle, I placed a little bug decal on the hood. I think adding decals to the cars is a really nice way of making them much more interesting without overcomplicating the shape, shading and angles of the car itself. I then wanted to create a slightly eviler looking car, so I went down kind of a Batmobile route. Instead of a windshield and roof, I just went for this kind of bubble thing as more of a cockpit, I guess. I also tried giving the car some massive wheel arches, which I think kind of worked. The car looks more like an evil alien sci-fi car than a Batmobile, but I'm still kind of happy with the end result. The next car I drew, I went for a more orcish theme, and this is probably my favourite one of the ones I made, which makes sense as it's after I've had the most practice. I want the cars to look unique, with each one having lots of character, without worrying about realism too much. On the back of the car, I was going to put this massive metal block fan engine thing, but the grey colours just didn't fit the car well. So I made this ribcage looking thing instead, and then added spikes on the front of the car, which I thought looked really good. I think they all helped to make this car really stand out. As a little bonus, I decided to try and draw some little scenery parts. Remember, everything is from the aerial top-down view, which can sometimes make it a little tricky as it's hard to convey the height of an object. So here I've drawn things like this red oil barrel, a landmine, some spiky caltrops, you know those things that if a car runs over them it gives them a flat tyre. I also drew a couple of small critters and a bunch of bones. I think these will come in really handy with the game I'm wanting to make. So I think I'm making some pretty decent progress with my art, and with more practice I'm sure it will keep on improving. But what about this game I want to make? Well, as for theming the game, I'm a huge fan of the post-apocalyptic kind of style. Games like Nuclear Throne and Fallout both utilise this to amazing effect, and that style is something I want to try and replicate. However, the piece of media I really want to draw inspiration from is a film called Mad Max Fury Road. I just love how much world building they fit into that film, and all of the action scenes just have stuck in my mind for years and years. I just think everything about it is really good at what it's trying to do. And so I want the game to have a heavy emphasis on exploring a desert-like wasteland, driving around in your car trying to scavenge materials, fuel and other resources to keep on going. However, this exploration element will be sprinkled with high-octane car chases and action-packed battles as you fend off bandits and other factions who also scavenge the wasteland. The wasteland will be comprised of several zones that you progress through on a single run, in a desperate attempt to escape the wasteland and reach your destination, Eden. Each of these zones is randomly generated for each run, which will keep the content fresh and unique every time you play. This means the game will be a Mad Max inspired, engine fueled action roguelike, and I think it has the potential to be pretty special. And just to give you guys a bit more context for what I think this project's going to look like, this is the result of me prototyping the cars movement, which already feels super satisfying, and that makes me think I'm onto a good idea here. And because I'm shifting focus onto this game project, I still want to aim to make a devlog roughly once a week. Making 2 videos a week for the past 2 months has been really good at helping me build up my skill at video editing, so now I'm confident in a skill that I didn't even have before. But now, with wanting to start this project, I think I need to shift the balance of quantity to quality a little bit more. This will mean that roughly each week I will still try and give an update for the project that I'm working on if I have enough to show off. But by doing 1 video a week, I will have more time to develop, so hopefully I should have more things to show off. However, if I really don't feel like I've got enough that's worthy to show off in a devlog or video, I'll try and provide some content that's either useful or helpful in the form of a different video. So thank you so much for sticking around and watching for this long if you're still here. And be sure to subscribe if you want to follow my game dev efforts with this new project. I'm so excited for this project and really want to make a game that's both unique and special. I'm going to keep uploading regularly, and I'll still try and inject the devlogs with useful tips and ideas, as well as the odd video which is still useful and entertaining. So there's going to be plenty of content to keep us all going. So until next time, goodbye.